Pokemon should be worried because Disney is about to catch them all. Sorry, Charizard. Send my apologies to Pikachu because I'm calling it now. If Disney applies their full weight to the upcoming release of their new trading card game, Lorcana, they will overtake Pokemon in the US and become the most popular trading card game and possibly the most popular type of trading cards overall. Yes, I know there are millions of die-hard Pokemon collectors and game players, and I am fully aware of the global strength of the Pokemon brand. But let's be honest, isn't our relationship with Pokemon here in the US a little strange? We don't really know the characters. There aren't blockbuster Pokemon movies on the screen most years, nor is there a Pokemon theme park to enjoy. We aren't humming Pokemon songs in the shower, and our kids aren't playing make-believe with Pokemon dolls. The quality and variety of Pokemon shows, video games, and merchandise is often lacking. Now, in Japan, it's a totally different story, but here in the US, Pokemon fans have a pretty limited number of ways to really enjoy the brand. Now compare that to Disney. I just got back from 4 days at Disney World in Orlando, and based on the at-capacity theme parks, sold-out hotels, and endless ringing of the cash register at gift shops, I'd argue the Disney brand has never been stronger. Whatever collectible Disney pushes in their stores, from pins to magic bands to jewelry to art, it seems to sell like crazy. Disney has an incredibly deep catalog of IP, with hundreds of well-known characters that they already leverage across movies, TV, books, and music, and soon, a trading card game. You're never going to convince me that Charmander is more loved than Cinderella, or that Raichu is better known than Rapunzel. In fact, the only thing that's held Disney back from dominating trading card games is, well, Disney itself. But if they nail the launch of Lorcana this fall, trading card games will change forever. And Kelly.
Hi.
I know you're a big Pokemon
I don't
collector.
like this topic.
Your childhood was Pokemon, so
I don't
you
like
are
this topic.
You're the perfect person to debate this with me
Am
today.
I don't know.
Welcome to another episode of the show here.
Thanks. Yeah, an episode. If I would have known what the topic was, I would have given the topic to somebody else. I would have called an audible had Ben come in. I don't want to do this. This is hard because I mean, growing up, Pokemon was my show. I actually didn't play the game. I just collected, and I mean,
which I think is the case.
I collected, and I still
we're
my
going.
entire
What's going
childhood
on here?
photo.
What is this?
This is
old school.
This is old school. This is Je m'appelle Kelly. This was like, these are my little doodles as a kid, but like this is something that I look to pass on to like my kids.
Okay, so this is full of probably early generation Pokemon
cards.
I
have first edition in here.
Oh, wow.
I collected the minute that you could start buying in the US. I started collecting. I also have Japanese cards as well.
What attracted you to Pokemon? Like, why?
It was the show. It was Ash Ketchum,
the cartoon?
Yeah, Team Rocket, you know, Jesse and James, and like, you know, Pikachu and Ash, and then their trials and tribulations with, you know, doing all of these tournaments. But I watched the show. I mean, the show started airing in the 90s, right? I started watching it when I was younger. Trading cards actually became available in the US around 1999.
Yep.
So I'm 10 years old at that time. You know, I'm always on a cartoon channel or something, and I just tended to gravitate to that show. I loved the actual characters, you know, Charizard, Squirtle, Psyduck, who explodes if he gets too stressed. I mean, it was fun. It was really fun. And I think that, you know, when we talk about the conversation that you're starting here with Lorcana and it possibly exceeding within the US, this, you know, competitive battle between Pokemon and Lorcana now, I feel like it's hitting on a different era, right? Because when I was growing up, it was Pokemon. Pokemon was it. There wasn't anything to compete with that or have the merchandising behind it.
Wait.
For me, when I was a kid.
So you obviously had the Pokemon cartoon, but how much Pokemon do you think you watched versus how much Disney was in your life at the time? Like we had, you had Disney cartoons everywhere. You had the Disney Channel. You had movies. You can't tell me that you didn't grow up on Beauty and the Beast and Little Mermaid and Lion King and all of these movies, right?
I did. But the difference here is that Pokemon gave me something to buy that I could afford as a kid.
Because Disney didn't have the cards.
Yeah. And I mean, but that's what I'm saying. I'm saying the generation in which Lorcana's coming in, it's a completely different ball game because, Pokemon at this moment, they do run some cartoons. You had, Pikachu, the Detective Pikachu, was the most recent like Hollywood blockbuster that was on the Pokemon franchise. But I mean, when I was growing up, I remember going to the movie theater at least twice for Pokemon movies. It was more prevalent then.
They're there, but I mean, you got many Disney movies per year.
Yeah,
in the
but
movie theaters.
there was no trading cards when in the 90s.
No, I
there were no trading cards.
So you were forced to do that?
I was not forced.
You were forced to do that?
I was willingly giving my money to the Pokemon franchise. I would go into we had a trading card store right around the corner from where I grew up, and I saw the baseball cards, I saw all of that, and I went every time I could go, and I had the ability to buy a pack or two. I asked my mom to take me to the store, and I went and bought a pack or two.
I think that's wonderful. And Pokemon's not going away. Look, there are many diehard Pokemon fans. My youngest son collects Pokemon. My oldest son used to collect Pokemon. Like, I get the Pokemon craze.
Yeah,
it's there.
So then, then let's start this conversation. How do you think that Lorcana can unseat Pokemon?
Because the affinity that people have towards Disney in the US far exceeds that of the affinity that people have towards Pokemon. People get so crazy about Disney as a brand, like the Disney characters. I mean, you literally go at Halloween. What are half the girls? I mean, more than half the girls. What are 90% of little girls dressed up as on Halloween?
Yeah, but then here's my question, and it wasn't until recently that this became part of the Disney scope. What are the boys dressed as?
Well, that's a fair point, but now don't forget though, Disney now owns they own Marvel.
Now, yes,
they own Star Wars.
So
historically, I agree with you. Historically, Disney, the princesses, all that type of thing has veered more towards little girls, female, all that type of thing. I agree with you. But of course, that's why Disney's made some of these acquisitions that they've made, and they have all of that IP that they can bring in now as well.
Yeah, and I would venture to say that Disney has had the stake in the little girl demographic for a very long time, including me. Very long time. I grew up watching the Disney princess movies.
Sure.
But I would say from the little boy standpoint, when I grew up, there were a lot of Ash Ketchums and there were very few princes. You saw a few princes, but you saw more like Spider-Man and, other Captain America, Iron Man, or like whatever was prevalent at the time. I mean, I think now, if we're talking about Pokemon being unseated by Lorcana, I think that Disney, I don't know whether they knew they were playing the long game, but they played the long game effectively, because I do think right now with the IP that they've collected for Disney, this is the most perfect time to drop something like this.
I would agree, because they've got all the IP now. They got everything. Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. One thing that really fascinates me about Disney, this is how strong their brand affinity is. If you go to a Disney hotel, you are paying top dollar to go to a Disney hotel. They charge a ton. If you're going to eat at a Disney restaurant, you're paying top dollar. The truth of the matter is, the accommodations, the food, not wonderful. Like, a Disney hotel is not comparing to a Four Seasons or a Ritz-Carlton in the type of service or accommodations you're getting. But oftentimes they're charging more money than a Four Seasons or a Ritz-Carlton. A Disney restaurant is not going to beat, your steakhouse at Epcot is not better than the Capitol Grill or even Ruth's Chris or Morton's or one of those brands. However, they're charging as much or more for your steaks there. Disney is able, through all facets of his business, to charge a premium because people love the brand. They want to experience the brand. They love the characters. It's incredible. You go to the theme parks and so many people are dressed up in Disney garb and Disney characters. Like people, like I'd say, like I mean, a large percentage of people are walking around, myself included, in Mickey Mouse shirts at the theme park. Like it's like this level of fandom that you see with sports teams, but outside of sports, you don't really almost ever see it outside of sports, but you see it with Disney. People are wearing the shirts, they're dressing up, they're into it the same way they're into it going to a sporting game. Like it's this crazy level of it's fanatical. Fans are fanatical about Disney. It allows them to charge premium, and it allows them to venture into a new area like trading card games, and I think are going to have a huge, massive loyal following go along with them if they play their cards right.
Right. Wow. No pun intended.
See what I did there?
Yeah, that was smart. No, but I do think you have a baked in audience. I mean, just even talking about, you know, the difference between like an actual sport fandom and, you know, the fandom behind Disney in general as a brand, right? You've got people that, I mean, I know people that don't watch sports, but they have Disney stuff. I mean, there's so many types of people that you won't necessarily get with just your average day sports fan or a trading card that's, you know, dedicated to football or basketball or something like that. But you will definitely get them with this type of set. So I could see that. But I think the question here I have is, this is not the first time Disney's had cards. You know, Disney's had cards for a while. So why is this different?
This is the first time they're doing a full-fledged trading card game, right? But no, there have been Disney cards over time. You're right. I mean, in fact, one of the really cool things when you go to card shows is you will sometimes find Disney cards, Disney trading cards from the 30s and the 40s, and, you know, and the 50s. There were actually some Disney trading card releases that, you know, limited, kind of far and few between, now super rare and can be very, very valuable, but there were. In the 80s and the 90s, you saw Disney cards. Different manufacturers made different cards. Even Skybox had a Disney set at one point. But cards it was a lot of that was junk wax era stuff. So it was heavily printed. There wasn't anything super unique. There weren't really chase cards to the same, at least not to the same extent there are today. There weren't serial numbered cards. There, you know, it wasn't quite the same, and there wasn't any playability to them. They weren't game cards. They were just collectible cards that were printed in mass and didn't necessarily
there was no real function to them.
Not a ton of function, and there was not function, and the collectability was limited because of the fact that so many of them were mass produced. Like a lot of cards in the 80s and the 90s were, before the card manufacturers started to figure out things like scarcity and, you know, serial numbering and all those types of things that make products much more desirable today. Now, what is interesting is there have been a couple of Disney releases this year in other countries. There was a Chinese release. So this is Disney's 100-year anniversary. So they're doing this big Disney 100 celebration at their theme parks. They started doing this last year, or maybe even late 2021. It's been like a year and a half celebration. It's actually coming to an end now, but they've been very focused on this 100 years of Disney. And so there was a trading card game release, or not a game, but there were trading card release in China. The Phantom set, I think it's from a company called Kakao in China. Phantom 100. These things have gone crazy popular. In the US, they become crazy popular. You'll see they're kind of super hyped right now on social media. Maybe it's a little bit of a bubble, I don't know. But the cards are beautiful. They're wonderful. They are really nice, and they've attracted a lot of people's attention to Disney cards all of a sudden. But they're Chinese. They're not American cards. There's a Japanese set which just came out from a company called Weiss Schwartz, I believe. That is a Disney 100 set, but once again, it's Japanese. There's not an American equivalent to this. What the American, and it's not a Disney 100 set, but the big American set that's going to come out is this Lorcana. And it's unlike those sets, unlike the Phantom 100 and the Japanese set. Lorcana is a full-fledged trading card game. And I do think that there are game elements, some game elements in I think the Japanese set that has come out as well. But the way that they're approaching Lorcana is they're trying to essentially create their own full-fledged game that's going to compete with Pokemon, that's going to compete with Magic, that's going to compete with Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's using such a wide catalog of Disney's IP. I mean, you've got, everything from a Princess and the Frog card to an Elsa card to
Right.
eventually, I suspect, although I haven't seen it in the concept art, but eventually I suspect you'll get outside of Disney's kind of core, and you'll get Marvel and you'll get Star Wars and all those types of things as well.
Is there a Mater card in there? Have we confirmed?
There's definitely.
I would love a Mater card.
I saw
hands down.
I saw some concept art for a Lightning McQueen card, so I
Hey.
assume there's a Mater card.
I hope so.
I'm sure, and if not in Series 1, then there will be Series 2. And I mean, that's the incredible thing about Disney. Like, think how many characters they have.
So many.
So many
I mean,
characters.
just before we even started rolling, we were talking about how much we love Eeyore.
Yeah.
Eeyore, Tigger, Pooh, that whole...
And they own that franchise. They own
Yes.
Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
They didn't invent it, but they bought it.
Yep.
Just like they bought Mary Poppins.
Yep.
They bought so many of the historical franchises over time.
That you've latched on, like kids have latched on. It's like a part of their core memory. That's what's so interesting to me about Disney is just generally in what they have collected within their IP is always something that latches on no matter where you grew up, how you grew up. There's always something within the Disney IP that you've latched onto as a core memory from your childhood that I think is such a smart strategy because it's something you'll never forget. Yeah. It's something you're always drawn to or compelled to, regardless of, whether you like the product or not. I said it, I would hunt down like crazy a Tigger 1 of 1 or a Tigger Hollow. Yeah. Because I had bedspreads, pillows, figurines, posters. I had outfits. I was head to toe Tigger growing up.
Okay, and that's my point, right? You were a big Pokemon collector, but did you have all those things Pokemon? Did you have a Charmander?
No, I didn't.
Bedspread?
But again, we're talking about the space that they're going into now. Disney's always owned that sort of external outside of trading cards or cards. They've always sort of owned that with kids of the merchandise. They haven't owned that space on merchandise for cards.
No.
Pokemon's own that. So
Correct.
now this is, again, when you're talking about trying to unseat Pokemon, at this time, that's what they're doing.
Disney does the merchandise space so well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're right. From outfits that, kids dress up into all the everything. I mean, possible. I mean, I was just down there this weekend. I bought
Head to toe.
I bought 3 damn Disney mugs.
Oh, I know.
I got mugs.
Every photo you have a different shirt that either has your name with the ears or like something that's related. And it's great to see, but that space has been owned by Disney for such a long time. Right. So them now trying something new on trying to unseat Pokemon that's owned cards for a very long time, the trading card space within the U.S. identity is very interesting. So my biggest question here is, it's two-parter. What can Disney take away from Pokemon to make the product desirable in that like first edition, shadow box, like all of that stuff, even the dark series, like the dark Charizard, those types of things, the hollows. What can they learn from what Pokemon has done? And then how, in some way, could Lorcana not go well? How could it fizzle out?
Sure. These are great questions, right? And even though I'm obviously very bullish on Lorcana and I'm saying all the ways it could be successful, it could also not be. There's ways Disney could mess this up as well. And they do sometimes mess things up, just like any big company does. So with Pokemon, you've got such an interesting split between people who buy the cards because they play the game, right? You've got a lot of game players. You got a lot of people who are brought into it. But then you also have a lot of collectors who have never played the game before. And it's kind of fascinating. Right. And it's a lot. And my kids, and we sat down a couple of times and we tried to play the game and learn the game. And they weren't that interested in the game. But damn, are they interested in ripping the packs open and trying to find the secret rainbow rare. Like Pokemon did a really good job with their product releases of making them very simple to understand. This is an area that sports cards have failed. It is extremely difficult for somebody new to come into the sports card market and understand what is the desirable set. Right. What is the desirable card? Why is the gold out of 10 in this set not worth as much as the mojo out of 25 in this set? And how come blue cards are numbered to 50 in this set, but numbered to 199 in this set, and in that set they're not numbered at all? And how come there's 18 different 1 of 1s of this same player in this set, and some are horizontal and some are vertical, but but the vertical ones are worth more than the horizontal ones. There's so much complexity to sports cards. Pokemon has simplified all of that to the point where they give you an actual book. We've talked about this before.
Yeah,
They
I
give
know.
you an
I'm
actual
literally
book.
recalling one of the first podcasts we've done. Like you were so animated about how complex it is.
Sports cards are super complex. Sports cards are too complex. That's something that Fanatics has to fix. They have to make sports cards easier for people to understand. Pokemon is easy for people to understand. Disney needs to make Lorcana easy for people to understand. I think they will. It seems like, I've read, and there's, by the way, there's the set, it's going to come out in August to hobby shops at first, and then it's going to hit mass retail. It's going to be in your Walmarts and your Targets and all of that starting in September. There's not a ton of information that's been released yet about the gameplay mechanics or the exact set structures or checklists. But based on the information that's out there, it seems like they're structuring it very similar to Pokemon. You're going to have different levels of rarity. They're calling it things like legendary versus rare versus, I think, epic, or, various, levels of rarity, much like Pokemon has. When you and they're going to have foil versions of the card and non-foil versions of the card. I imagine that they'll probably have secret, rare, extra rare versions like Pokemon has, these types of things. But it's if they keep it very segmented, very easy to understand, easy for people to get into. I will say the gameplay with Pokemon, as someone new trying it for the first time, it's complicated and challenging. And I sat down with my son, who at that point, my younger son, who was really into Pokemon probably when he was 6, and we gave a couple of hours towards trying to really play the game and figure it out. And my conclusion was it was a little too complicated at that moment for him to fully follow and have the strategy and play along. I hope Disney's gameplay, and I think it will be, I hope it's slightly simplified from that. I hope it's easy to the point where a 6 or 7-year-old could hop in. Maybe there's a simpler version of the game. Maybe there's multiple. And Pokemon's now gone back and tried to do this. Pokemon's come up with a simplified version of their own game that they released, I think, a year or two ago, where you could buy like a board set which has different rules, which have simplified things. Hopefully Disney just has that from the bat, because they've got such a wide fan base that it would be great to see 6-year-olds be able to jump in and play. It would also be great, though, to see the game actually be strategic and challenging for a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old or an adult to be able to play. So hopefully they've got, they've kind of got that figured out. And Disney is the type of company that when they really think about something, when they really concentrate on something, they tend to execute very well.
Right.
So I have confidence that they're going to get the gameplay right. I have confidence that they're going to get the cards right. And I have confidence that they're going to put out a really good product when this thing hits market later this year.
So then your conclusion is the only way that this could fizzle out, or they could handle this wrong, is if they make the gameplay too difficult, or if they don't make the structure of the sets easy to understand.
That would be part of it. And there still is going to be a huge swath of people that collect the cards and never play the game. So the gameplay, though, being solid would definitely help, because your hardcore trading card game enthusiasts are going to care about the gameplay. Okay. So the gameplay has to be good. So yeah, step number 1, good gameplay. Hopefully they've got that down. We'll see how that translates. Step number 2, they really have to fully integrate it into the Disney experience. This could be an area where it could not reach the potential of overtaking Pokemon if they don't put their full weight behind it. Right. And by full weight, what I mean is this has to be featured. They have to find a way to integrate it into their theme parks. It has to be featured in their television programming. There has to be competitions on the Disney Channel where you're seeing the Lorcana finals on the Disney Channel. It has to be integrated throughout their media. It certainly has to be well merchandised in all of their shops. Right. Like it's got to be, this has to be readily available. People need to be able to, attain it. And it's got to be they need it, like in downtown Disney Springs, as they now call it down in Orlando, they've got to have, a Lorcana gameplay area, right? Like they've got to have ways to activate this and bring this to life throughout all of their properties, all of their forms of media, their in-person experiences and everything like that. Yeah. If they don't do that, if they treat this kind of like it's a side project, if they don't fully integrate it, then maybe they lose there. Disney pins, pin collecting and pin trading at Disney is a big thing. Maybe you did that when you were a kid.
I did not do that. I had friends that did.
Sure.
But again, it's another form of, again, Disney does really well with the collectibles.
So they have done, they have pin trading all throughout the theme parks, all throughout Disney Springs, all throughout the Disney hotels. Kids can take their Disney pins and trade them for other Disney pins with all these Disney employees positioned everywhere with these pin trading boards. Well, how do you replicate that experience with Lorcana?
Right.
How do you have card trading? How do you have card playing in the hotels? Trading in the theme parks, doing those different things. If they bring that level of commitment to it, it's going to be. Pokemon should just
shaking in their boots
in the U.S., not in Japan, because I recognize
there's a snake in my boots.
In the U.S., the one thing I will say is Disney does sometimes move slow. I was shocked when Frozen came out a number of years ago and was a runaway success.
Yeah.
I mean, the quickest accelerating Disney hit of all time. And yet they were unbelievably slow to adapt their theme parks to have anything Frozen related. It took them a while to do anything. And then they finally added a meet and greet with Anna and Elsa, which then was crazy, unbelievable 4-hour lines and all this kind of stuff.
If you remember, it didn't get a lot of hype when releasing either. So I don't know whether they
it snuck up on them.
Yeah.
But even so, even with all their franchises, they're a bit slow to bring those into the theme parks. And I recognize if you're going to do a whole ride, that takes a ton of planning and coordination. You want to see if the show is successful before you do it. But they're slow with that stuff. And so hopefully with Lorcana, they've got a plan to begin integrating that from day one and not wait 3 years, see if it starts to take hold, and then start to think about how might we apply this in the theme parks. So that would be the danger. If they don't put their full weight behind it, if they don't have a really good integrated approach,
they're playing it safe.
Then maybe it doesn't go to the extent I think it can. But I'm pretty convinced that if they do put their full weight behind it, this thing will beat out Pokemon in the US.
Okay. Now, are there other companies that you could see that are, similar to that Disney aspect and Pokemon aspect as well that we could see as being competitive in this space? I mean, I know Disney IP is massive, but could we see other companies? What other companies do you think would be similar to, or in the brand context, what brands could compete?
I don't really know. I don't think that there frankly are any. I don't think any brand could take on Pokemon other than Disney. And potentially unseat Pokemon in the US. I don't think any in the trading card game space. I don't think any other brand could do it. So here are the top 12 highest grossing media franchises in the world.
Okay.
Number 1 is Pokemon.
Yep.
Number 1 is Pokemon. Number 2 is Hello Kitty. But they're huge. They're huge, obviously, in Japan, less so in America. Massive worldwide, though. Massive in Japan. I don't see a Hello Kitty trading card game in the US making much
I don't
noise.
either. Also, the Hello Kitty brand identity is primarily latched onto by females.
Yeah. Number 3 is Winnie the Pooh. Believe it or not, that surprised me. But Winnie the Pooh is owned by Disney. Number 4 is Mickey Mouse.
So,
by the way, on this list, they've divided Disney up across a bunch of these. Number 5 is Star Wars.
Disney.
Owned by Disney, right? Number 6 is I think it's a Japanese or China. I think it's a Chinese brand, a manga. Number 7 is Disney Princesses. Number 8 is Mario. That might be the one. Mario might be the one. So
which, by the way, is I totally want to see the Super Brothers Mario movie.
Yep.
But do you remember it was in the 1990s, the Super Mario Brothers movie they did then with John Leguizamo?
Yes. With the real life actors.
The real life
with the
actors.
big mustaches.
Yes,
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Throwback.
Yeah. Nintendo, I would say, it's probably Pokemon, Disney, and everything Disney owns, which includes Star Wars and Marvel and all that stuff. And then it's probably Nintendo.
Yeah.
That to me would be if Nintendo wanted to come out with a trading card game set and they really wanted to try to compete with Pokemon by utilizing all of the various Nintendo characters, there would be some interest there. But still, their catalog of characters is
I don't know.
tiny
You got Donkey Kong, you got Mario, Luigi, Peach, Toad.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's more that I'm like,
But I don't know that people identify with those characters to the same. They don't have the same degree of love for those characters that they do the Disney characters. They just don't.
I don't know. Look, again, I would agree with your tier format here.
Yeah.
I do think, Nintendo's not comparable. When talking about moving into the trading card space, I don't think Nintendo would have as much weight as Disney would be with the IP that they've collected. But I do think that there might be something there. That's an interesting avenue you could go down.
Then after that, after Mario, you've got Jump Comics.
Okay.
Another. I think that's another Japanese.
Manga, yep.
Yeah. You've got Harry Potter next.
But that also is Disney.
No, it's not. Harry Potter's not Disney.
Oh, Universal. Sorry.
Yeah.
My bad.
Harry Potter's not Disney. But even so, like Harry Potter had this incredibly bright moment in time. Obviously, all of the original actors are now too old. That's one nice thing Disney has is they got a lot of animated actors that don't
are
age.
Always young.
Animated characters that are always young. Harry Potter's got an issue there. And obviously, they found ways to adapt, and they came out with a new movie not too long ago. But it's just not at the same level.
They're also recreating it.
Yeah.
They're in the works to recreate the entire thing as a TV series now.
Yeah.
Which is going to be interesting.
I'm sure there's going to continue to be good Harry Potter IP, but it just doesn't have the breadth.
Right.
Then you have Marvel, owned by Disney. Then you have Spider-Man, which is not owned by Disney, owned by Sony. However, people get that confused because Spider-Man people associate with Marvel. Not part of it, but the Spider-Man character is licensed in to it. So Disney does have some licensing rights to Spider-Man, even though not direct ownership. So anyway, like half that list of the top 12 is various Disney things. And if you continue to go down that list, there's going to be more and more Disney. So yeah, to me, it's Pokemon, Disney, maybe Nintendo. Those are really the players that could make crazy noise in the trading card game space.
So generally what I'm hearing is that whether we're talking about Disney, whether we're talking about Pokemon, whether we're talking about all the other brands you're bullish in general about the trading card space.
I am. By the way, I also say one unique thing about MetaZoo, because we've talked about MetaZoo on the channel before.
Yeah.
They did something really smart, I thought, when MetaZoo came out. They knew, the founders of that, Michael Waddell and Steve Aoki, they knew that they didn't have the characters, they didn't have the IP, and they were trying to go into a space where you've got Pokemon and people recognize the characters in the IP. So what they did is they leveraged all of these stories of these cryptids, or
the lore, the myths.
Yeah, all these myths all over the world.
All over the world.
The Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot and Yeti and all these various
Chupacabra.
things. Yeah, they leverage all those stories. So that was actually a really interesting, smart, savvy end around to not having the IP, but being able to use public domain IP, IP that nobody owns, that are just myths and stories, and being able to bring it into your game and actually have a lot of your characters all of a sudden be well known. I thought that was a brilliant move that they did that with MetaZoo, and it's paid off. Their cards have become popular. But in general, it's having the IP is so important. Yes, I am bullish on the trading card space. I mean, obviously I'm bullish on, you guys, obviously sports cards, but yeah, trading card games I continue to be bullish on as well, because people love to collect what they love. And people like to invest in what they love. There are lots of sports fans, but then there are a lot of people who don't love sports, but they're still fans of things. Right. They still want to have that fan-like experience.
It's an inherent nature for someone to want to latch onto something outside of themselves.
And I honestly think Disney has become that hugely popular fan brand that's a replacement for sports in some ways for a lot of people. Like, okay, I may not be a fan of a basketball team, but I sure am a fan of Thor. There you go, right? Or something of that nature, right? And so I think that I've been very, very bullish on the alternative asset space. I think that as time goes on, you have more and more younger generations that want to be able to put money into something that they believe in. I mean, we've seen the rise of social entrepreneurship, which is people wanting to put money into companies that are doing social good, that they have some type of connection with, because to them, like, it feels better to be able to buy a pair of Tom's shoes,
right,
because you know that this is helping people or whatever, than maybe to buy a pair of Nike, because it doesn't quite have the same mission associated with it. So we've seen the rise of those types of companies. Now, you know, Disney or sports card brands may not have the same social mission, but what they have is that same type of connection where people can buy something because they feel a type of personal connection to it that they don't feel just buying a mutual fund or buying a plot of real estate strictly for investment purposes, right? So I think alternative assets, collectibles in particular, I think have this really unique blend of, you can buy something that hopefully will retain and grow in value over time, even though it is risky compared to more traditional forms of investing. But you can also buy and invest in something that you have that connection to. So I'm bullish on the trading card game space, just like I'm bullish on the sports card space, because I think as you know, the younger generations grow up and accumulate more and more wealth, you're going to see a higher percentage of wealth being put into these areas. And I think for kids, you know, kids can experience trading card games either from the standpoint of they can actually play the game and have fun playing the game, or they can they can rip packs, buy cards, collect cards, flip cards, the same way that they do with sports cards. They can do the same thing with trading card games, you know, and you know, chase the rare card, go to a collecticon, flip it at a collecticon or at a Gen Con or one of the trading card game shows. It's a fun thing. And so you kind of have the duality of with sports cards, you get to buy the card and then watch how the player performs. With trading card games, you get to buy the card and actually use it in a game. So I think there's a lot of crossover there, a lot of similarity. And of course, just like sports cards, trading card games, maybe even more so, are mini pieces of art. They're a form of
it's a lot of beautiful artwork that's been put into these cards.
Particularly with Disney, right?
Yeah.
So particularly the Lorcana cards, I believe, I think these things are going to be magnificent. The foil versions, all the, you know, beautiful Disney artwork.
Yeah. Magic is also one of those that's put a lot of artwork into their sets. It's really, so what I'm hearing a lot of this on trading cards when we're talking about these like missions. So you talked about like social missions. I think trading cards sit in like an emotional mission space. Yeah. And what's interesting about trading cards and like the trading cards games space is that, as you were saying, you know, when you buy, a sports card, you know, if it's a player that's currently playing, you know, you can watch their performance and, you know, see that card either rise or fall in value. If they're, you know, a retired person, I mean, you would have remembered seeing them play. The interesting twist here is that with trading cards, it's almost like your fate's in your own, like your own destiny is in your hands because you are the player. So it ties in this deep, for me, it's a deeper connection, because it's like, if you are actually going to play the game, you're the one that physically holds that card. You're the one that's in charge of your destiny, whether you're Pikachu in a battle with Charizard can win that battle in the way that you play the game. So it's very fascinating how they tie in that sort of emotional mission almost in that sense.
That's lovely. Yeah. That's why I think they're going to continue, why I think they're going to be popular. And I think it's going to be a fun space to see how it evolves when Lorcana comes on, and see how the entire space grows in the next many years.
Gosh, it's a lot of Disney talk today, which has been fun. But actually, so this is perfect, because this is going to go straight into the bit segment. You, as you said, just got back from Disney.
I did.
I have been to both Disney World and I've been to Disneyland. Nope. I've been to both.
We did Disneyland last summer when we were in LA. We were there for a few days, did the parks there. Yeah, it's fun.
It is fun.
Yeah.
But I do know I have not been enough to either park to register a complete like analysis of a comparison here. So I would like for you, as our bit segment today, because I know that people want to visit, people want to go, people want to like actually visit these theme parks. Disneyland versus Disney World.
Totally different experiences.
Okay.
If you're going for the like full theme park Disney experience, Disney World, hands down.
Okay.
What's crazy is there's two parks at Disneyland. There's and obviously these are the, you know, older parks have been there for a long time, especially Disneyland was the original, right? And then you've got California Adventure. The two parks, California Adventure and Disneyland in California, they both would fit inside the parking lot to the Magic Kingdom in Orlando. The parking lot of one of the four parks in Orlando takes up more space than both of the theme parks in LA. That is how much different the scope is between Disneyland and Disney World. Disney World is a whole different level in terms of size, in terms of immersion. I mean, even the hotels. I think Disneyland has 2
it's not
official
very large.
hotels.
Yeah.
Disney World has 40 or 50 official hotels that are like actual Disney branded hotels. The scope is unbelievably different. Now, Disneyland was still a lovely experience. I enjoyed it. Like, and it's cool. Like, you feel a little more
nostalgic.
It's nostalgic.
Yeah.
But it's just a totally different scope. The castle at Disneyland. This is funny. Cinderella's castle at Disneyland. If you've been to Disney World and you've seen the castle, you're going to go see the castle at Disneyland, and you're not going to believe that's Cinderella. That's the main castle, because it's like a third of the height or something like that. I don't know exactly what the difference is, but it's way, way shorter and smaller than the one at Disney World. So you're kind of like, wait. That's the castle? Like, no. The one at Disney World, that's the castle, right? So it's a different scope, but they're both great experiences. I mean, and there's some unique rides that aren't, Disneyland had a few rides that aren't at Disney World that we enjoyed a lot. The Incredicoaster was fun, and the Guardians of the Galaxy thing where it takes you up and down the tower. And there were a few fun rides there that didn't exist at Disney World, but Disney World overall is kind of where it's at. Now, there are many hardcore Disney enthusiasts that say the best Disney park in the world is in Tokyo.
Yes, in Japan.
Disney Sea. Tokyo has 2 Disney parks.
Oh, I didn't know that they had 2. Okay, I just know that I've heard a lot of people say that one's top tier.
Yeah, and one of the 2, the newer of the 2, is Disney Sea. People say that is the park.
Well, you're going.
I'm going to Disney Sea. I will be at Disney Sea in July. Taking the family to Tokyo.
See, what people don't understand is that Geoff is a hardcore Disney fan.
I do really like Disney. I like it. I like it because I appreciate the power of the brand. I appreciate the business aspect. I think the characters are great, and all that in the theme parks. I enjoy the theme parks, but I also really enjoy the business aspect of Disney. I really enjoy, how did this genius guy draw a little mouse, create a little animated flick with a mouse back in the 20s, 1920, 100 years ago. Well, yeah, it's Disney 100, so exactly 100 years ago. And that turned into this 100 years later. That to me is really fascinating. And so I think there's so many interesting studies in business and marketing and brand affinity and all of that with it that exists within Disney, more so than probably any other company on earth. I mean, a lot of people look at Apple and they're like, look at Apple and their brand label and say, yes, Apple's a great case study, but Disney's an even better case study. I mean,
as a kid, you're not going to be like, oh, I remember me and my iPhone hanging out.
Right.
Like that's not what you're getting. You're getting an actual emotional connection to a character, to a story. It's a different play there. Yeah. So that is fascinating. But so let's talk about all right. So say I want to go to Disney World.
Yep.
How do I go to Disney World? First off, what would you say? Because you've been to Disney World quite a lot. Because you guys used to go all the time when you lived in Florida.
Yeah, this is an embarrassing fact. I gotta say this. This happened. Ironically, the timing of this, because we just went to Disney this past weekend. A couple of weeks ago, in one of my son's classes at his school, they were doing some type of segment on Disney, and they asked all the students in the class if they had gone to Disney before to raise their hand, and most of the kids raised their hand. And then they said, if you've gone twice, raise your hand. If you've gone 3 times, 4 times, they get a 5 times. He's the only kid with his hand raised in the entire class. And then they go 10 times, he's the hands raised. 20 times, his hands, and they go, Reeves, how many times have you gone to Disney World? And he said, I think 100.
Oh my gosh.
And he's not far off on that, because so here's the deal. We used to live in Gainesville, Florida. When he was, when his first 3 years before we moved to Atlanta, we lived in Gainesville. Well, Gainesville is an hour and 40-minute drive from Disney. And Gainesville is a lovely college town. I love it there, but there's a lack of things to do with kids on the weekend. So we got annual passes to Disney. We would go down to Disney at least once a month. We were down at Disney. because it was actually an inexpensive thing to do. Like if you're from Gainesville, you get an annual pass, you go down there, you spend a day or two, get a hotel for a night.
You're not paying for the hotels, you're not paying for the flight, you're not paying for all
Not
that.
if you go down and up in a day. And the hotels actually, there's so many hotels in Orlando, they can often be very, very inexpensive. So even if you bought a hotel night, for a night or two, it typically, it was an inexpensive way to enjoy the weekend. So we actually did it a lot. So yeah, I know Disney pretty well.
So what would you say would be the correct way to experience in Disney World?
You got to go at a low traffic time. That would be ideal. Don't, if you can avoid it. And I recognize school vacation schedules, but don't go during Thanksgiving week. Don't go during Christmas break. Don't go during spring break. Those times are all crazy crowded. The Disney experience is so much more enjoyable if you're able to go during a fairly quiet period at the park.
Yeah.
It can be really not enjoyable if you go during a busy period. I will say there's so many families that save up for these big Disney vacations and then they go during one of those high traffic weeks, and the kids the lines are crazy. The kids become miserable. They become bored waiting in the lines. It's hot. It's crowded. It's hard to move around. It's hard to, all the restaurants are sold out. Like, it can turn into a not good experience real quick if you don't plan it out well. So ideally, you go at a lower traffic period, and there's plenty of crowd calendars online that will tell you when that is. You do your research, because that also makes all the difference. If you show up at the park,
you don't know where you're going,
no plan, no order of rides you're trying to hit, no pre-planning on when the lines are going to be the best, or doing the whole, Disney Genie thing. If you can do that, definitely do that.
What is Disney Genie?
Disney Genie is their new fast pass system. They've found a way now to basically make more money off of everybody. So now they charge you for the ability to skip lines.
Yeah.
But that's a whole complexity to it. You got to research that. It's worth it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's worth it to pay the extra money to do the Disney Genie thing. If you can do a VIP guide, do a VIP guide. Oh my God. The VIP guide experience is so superior. It's also expensive as heck. It's ridiculous how much they charge for VIP guides. But if you're fortunate enough to be able to do it, do the VIP guide, because it's going to, you're not going to wait in any lines. You're going to go wherever you want to go. Theme park, all that stuff. But, doing your research, booking everything the very first moment that things open up to book is really important. And finally, just pace yourself and have a good time. I see so many families having miserable times because they're trying to rush around and do everything. And it somehow, Disney vacations can quickly turn into this very stressful experience that you feel like you have to go and do everything. And step back for a second, just enjoy it. Just being able to walk around the parks and eat snacks. Even just that experience for your kids is fun. Buying them 3 ice creams in a day and 4 tubs of popcorn and walking around and there's ways to enjoy it if you just take a step back for a second. And so just don't try to overdo it. Live in the moment a little bit, and you're going to have a more enjoyable time. Awesome.
All right. So as we're wrapping up,
yep.
This is my last question, and then we'll say goodbye for now until next week. They just this weekend alone, they just allowed people to start riding the Tron ride.
Yeah, we did it.
How was the Tron ride?
It was good, not great. It was good, not great.
Okay.
The Tron ride was, it just started at Magic Kingdom. We were there, not quite on opening day, but real close to opening day. It's the environment's super cool. So it's called the Tron Light Cycle roller coaster. So you sit on a motorcycle essentially, and you go on a cool track while you're strapped into a motorcycle. So one thing that's different about it is you're leaning all the way forward, holding on to handlebars. You're strapped in from your back, being pressed down onto the motorcycle. So it's a different feeling than most rides. When you take off and you go over the first couple of turns, that's real cool. The only challenge with it is Magic Kingdom is space limited. The area they had to build it in was real small and compact because they don't have much space. So the ride was real short. It was, I think, 30 seconds.
Oh, what?
So it would have been if it could have been a longer track, it could have been so much better. It could, if it was a really long track and it could have been like a 2-minute ride, it probably would have been the best ride at Disney. But because of the fact that it was 30 seconds, it was small, it was compressed, there was only so much they could do with it. So you got like 10 seconds of like just like real pure, like this thing is awesome. And then it kind of, whittled away, and then, that was it. The theming was super cool. The whole thing was super cool.
Yeah.
I just wish they had more space.
They
'cause
always
could've-
do well with the experience.
Yeah.
But I hear you on the ride. That actually makes me wonder how long typical roller coaster rides last.
A minute to 2 minutes.
Yeah.
There's a motorcycle at Universal, Haggart's, part of the Harry Potter world, the Haggart's Magical Motorcycle Adventure or whatever. That's actually better. It's similar to Tron in that it's a motorcycle, but it's better, and it's mainly better because they've got a longer track, so they got more to work with, and so it's better in my opinion.
Oh, well, there you heard it first.
But the Guardians of the Galaxy roller coaster at Epcot, that is super. I'd highly recommend that.
Okay.
That opened up not too long ago. That opened up, I think, the end of last year.
Last year,
Yeah,
okay.
so maybe early last year. It's about a year old, I think, at this point. But it's super. I'd recommend that. The Guardians of the Galaxy coaster at Epcot. It's very similar to Space Mountain. They took the Space Mountain ride and they said, how could we make the new Space Mountain of the future?
Right.
They nailed it. It's tremendously well done.
All right.
Best roller coaster out there.
Hey, there you go. Again, you heard it first. Well, that was awesome. This now makes me want to go and try to book going to Disney
There you
World.
go.
So thank you very much.
Just do
for
it
that.
at a quiet time.
Noted. All right. Well, that was Geoff Wilson Show for today.
There you go. Appreciate
it. You can find this obviously on YouTube at you can find us at the Geoff Wilson. You can also follow us on social at the Geoff Wilson Show as well. If you can't watch this, you can listen to this. We are also available on podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen. And that is also the Geoff Wilson Show.
There you go. Thank you.
No problem. See everybody at Disney World.
Bye.